Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better. How often do you get to the end of the calendar year or the end of any kind of season and find yourself thinking, oh gosh, what did we actually do? Did we actually make progress on our goals? What actually happened? Today, we're going to sit down and reflect on the midpoint of 2026. So as I'm recording, we are going to be, hitting the end of June 2026, right? It is the perfect time to look back on what has happened thus far this year for you and to think forward. What is it that I still want for myself for this year? Now, we can get into this very touchy place as people who may have struggled with perfectionism and people pleasing when it comes to thinking about goals, right? Because we will tend to put down very far reaching goals, very important goals. And that kind of big thinking has often served us well, right? We've been able to set out audacious goals like getting into a certain college or starting medical school, getting through your step exams, residency, those kinds of things, right? These are amazing feats. But sometimes we do a bad job of recognizing the little things along the way and figuring out, especially when there's not some big anchor to tie it to, like graduating from residency or getting into the fellowship or getting a promotion, right? So today we're going to tune our attention a little bit into some of those smaller, softer goals that can really make a difference. So let's get into it. Now, the first thing that I want us to do is to just notice and recognize amazing things that you've already done this year. Maybe you started a family. Maybe you have started using an AI scribe or some other kind of tool, right, that has made things go faster. Maybe you have started exercising again. Maybe you are putting your phone to bed earlier and not setting up doom scrolling, right? Let's notice something that has gone really well, or as many things that have gone well this year that we can just pause and reflect and highlight and notice, right? As physicians who have accomplished, these big major goals, we tend to overlook those little things for ourselves. It's ironic because we may celebrate those small wins in our patients, right? The patient who smoked a little bit less since you saw them last and had that conversation, you will celebrate that. And yet you might not recognize, oh, like I actually exercised twice this week and last week I didn't do it at all, right? We made progress. But we often really are incredibly dismissive of small things that we've done. So take out a sheet of paper, grab your notes app, whatever you want to do, and just reflect on some good things that you have done this year, this week, that you can be proud of. Nothing is too small to go on this list. So write it out. The next thing that I want us to think about is, all right, if we are halfway through 2026 and we're using that as a completely arbitrary anchor point, but when we leave residency, we're no longer on that calendar year cycle in the same way. So today we're just leaning into it. What is it that you want for yourself for the rest of this year? So again, as we're recording, we're at the end of June 2026, right? We are looking at the next 6 months and thinking, what are the things that I want for myself? Think about personal things. Think about things for your friends and family. Then think about professional things, right? We tend to flip that order. We're putting ourselves first. Do you want some more sleep? Do you want to nail down something in your health routine or figure out where you can get more quiet time, right? Write that down. Are you thinking about scheduling family vacations, right? You want more time with your family, but you're really bad at planning. This is a really common theme that comes up in coaching sessions all the time of getting to the end of the year with use it or lose it PTO and not being able to use it and therefore losing it, right? Again, we are here at the midway point. If that is you, if you know you have hours that you need to use before the end of 2026, I want you to write that down and get them scheduled now so that you're able to use them up before the end of the year. That might be vacation time, right? That might be a few days off here and there just for you, all by yourself, right? Or with some people that you care about. My husband and I do a quarterly day date. Thank you to Rachel Rubin, right? Sexual medicine specialist, right? She recommends that for maintaining a healthy relationship. It is an easy thing, and we schedule it every quarter, and it's been fantastic. What are the professional things that also need to happen or that you want to happen for the rest of this year? Are there CMEs that you plan to do? Are you working towards some kind of certification or a promotion? Do you want to get better at your charting, right? Name one thing, and let's stick to one thing in the professional domain that you're looking for. But again, go ahead and write it down, right? When we are choosing to sit and pause in this space and write down some of the things that we want, we are tuning our brain's attention to it. That's why it's worth taking the time to do, right? When we think about tools like vision boards or written goals or any number of similar, organizational schemes, the act of writing it down tunes our brain into it. Here, we're pausing in this space so we can think about it, pay attention to it, and start to make some plans that will make this more real for ourselves in the second half of this year. Again, we often are out of calendars where our attention is focused on this. If we think about college, right? We have certain years, there's an academic year, right? We go through years 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then we finish. Medical school, right? Also follows a very defined path. Residency, fellowship, right? These things are defined, but in our attendinghood, there is not that same kind of anchor. Sure, you could have ranks of academic medicine that you go up through. You may have clinical leadership or something, but it isn't that closed, defined periods of time that help us to anchor out goals. And so let's bake it in, right? Let's sit down a few times a year and actually look, what are the things that I want? What are the things that I plan to work on? What are the things that went well, right? Doing this allows us to be intentional, allows us to make progress, allows us to troubleshoot. This is a lot of the work that highly effective coaches do with their clients. So we're doing a little bit right here, right now, again, in the middle of 2026. Okay, so now we've got some things written down, some things that we want for ourselves. Again, personal, family and friends, professional. Look at these lists and think, why do I want these things? And I want you to sit in a place of kindness and no judgment, but just thinking, why do I want these things? If I'm looking and the things that I want for myself are more sleep or time to exercise or more fun, why are those things on there? Right? In part, they're on there because you're not getting enough of them now. In part, you're recognizing probably that you're working so incredibly hard and you're not prioritizing these things, right? And let's highlight, of course, that exercise and sleep and fun, connection, right? These are all essential. We think of them as frivolous, we think of them as luxuries, we think of them as things that we are going to, get lots of when we retire. We can't wait for that. That's not how that works, right? And if you wrote those things down, it's a sign that we need to prioritize those things. But let's be really clear, why do I want them? If I want more fun in my life, it's because maybe I need more joy, more novelty. Maybe I feel more like myself if I'm laughing more. Great. What else? Right? If I need more sleep, that's a pretty obvious one, right? But why do I need more sleep? Because it's important for my health, because I'm cranky, because I yell at my kids more, right? If I don't sleep enough. Be incredibly granular there. And again, we're coming at this from a place of self kindness and no judgment. I just want you to get it out, really pull it out. Why do I want these things? If I am looking at my friends and family list, again, I might be looking at, I want, more time with friends. I want more quality time with my kids. Why do I want those things, right? I want quality time with my kids because our time with our kids is finite to some extent, right? Eventually they grow up, they leave our house. We want to spend some time with them and we want some of that time to be quality. Now, we get to define what that means, but why? Why? Because we want to have good connections with them. Write it down. Make it really clear for yourself. Sometimes you surprise yourself, right, when you actually get things down. Okay. Next step. Again, self-kindness, no judgment. What's getting in the way of me having those things right now? When you look at your list, there's probably not a lot of surprises on there, right? These are probably things that you know you wanted for some time. You want to be exercising more, you want to be sleeping more, you want to have more time with your spouse or with your kids or your dog, right? What is getting in the way? Now, there may be some eye rolls there. There may be some, of course, it's work, right? Work's getting in the way because all these patients are here. I have to spend so much time, right? I work 80 hours a week. I have young kids, whatever those things are. Still, we're going to write them down. What is getting in the way? Being really honest in this space. And again, no judgment, self-kindness. We're going to lean into those. Allows us to be more clear on the things that need to change, right? Nothing changes if nothing changes. Sounds obvious, but here's this again, another hackneyed state. Hope is not a strategy. Hoping that I'm going to get more sleep doesn't actually make it happen, especially if I'm staying up late finishing my notes every night. Hoping that I'm going to get more exercise doesn't make me feel more motivated to actually do it or do anything really to facilitate it actually happening, right? Be specific. What is getting in the way? If I am not exercising when I get home in the evening, why? Is it because I'm too tired? I'm too cranky? I worked through lunch and now I'm pretty hangry and there's no way I have the energy to do it. Okay, right? That points at some things that need to change. But I don't necessarily know that if I'm staying in my head and beating myself up over the fact that I did not exercise again this evening as I intended to do. We need to be clear on what's getting in the way. We need to be granular and honest, because that's what helps us to move forward, right? If you think about tools that we have learned and use perhaps every day with our patients, thinking about motivational interviewing, here it is. We are using this tool again with self-compassion, with kindness, without judgment, to help ourselves be in a place where we are more likely to stick with the plan, to be able to hold our priorities and values central. We won't do it if we are not clear, right? Are you spending a lot of time in your inbox? Are you spending a lot of time on your notes? I know the answer to that already. Not trying to call you out, but that points to, yep, in this broken healthcare system, I am doing too much in a way that is running ramshot over my time, right? And that points to boundaries. This is hard work. And of course, we get into discussions of moral injury, we get into discussions of broken healthcare system, but we also will use that as perpetual excuses to not do the hard thing of setting boundaries. There are deep conversations that we could have about that, and this is absolutely good work to sit down and go through with somebody, right? Whether that's a coach or just having honest conversations with other people to find out where they struggle. But what I promise you is that at least part of this work is figuring out how to have healthy boundaries, because that's a lot of what ends up getting in the way. Other things that come up, of course, is procrastinating. There's a lot of reasons why we do that too, right? We've had a hard day and we may struggle with doing something else that seems hard or is hard. Being really clear about what is going on, writing down some specifics, trying to keep it factual, trying to use honest language, trying to stay out of judgment, and just getting it down will help us to uncover, all right, what needs to change. The next question is, how can I make this easier? So we've identified some goals or things that we want to work on, things that we want more of in the second half of the year. We've thought about what is getting in the way right now. Now, how can we make this easier is a question that we don't often ask ourselves, which is interesting, but we are people who love algorithms and systems and consistency, and we love to assume that things will be logical and straightforward and evidence-based. But in reality, sometimes we just need to make something easier. How can we make this easier? If you look and you recognize that, I'd like to be spending more time with family or friends, right? How can I make this easier? I might connect with somebody and find out, can we just have a once a week or once a month date on the calendar that this is the time that we do this thing together? Maybe we're going to go for coffee on the first Saturday each month, and that is a dedicated time that I'm available and I can meet up with a friend, right? Maybe we're going to declare that Tuesday night is taco and game night in our house, right? And we are going to have a really easy dinner and we're going to play games together, right? Maybe that would be a fun way for having more family time. Maybe something else needs to happen to make it easier, right? If we're trying to focus on better nutrition for ourselves, Do I need to order some of the bougie meal kits, right? That, we can either prepare really fast and it comes with all the ingredients, or maybe they're even pre-made because that will help me to have better nutrition more regularly than what's going on right now where I don't plan ahead or there's vegetables rotting in the fridge, right? And I'm calling DoorDash, right? How can we make this easier to do the things that we want, to have more of the things that we want? Let's ask ourselves that question. Let's be really clear. And again, from a place of self kindness, how can we make this easier? The next question is, what needs to be scheduled? So this might tap into the, how can I make this easier? But I also want us to just think about, kind of the runway for the end of the year. One of my coaching clients is a physician, and we started coaching in the fall last year. And one of the things she was struggling with is that she had some use it or lose it vacation, and she just wasn't using it, right? She was going to lose it. And there was a certain amount of time that was in that bucket, and there was some other vacation that wasn't, at risk for loss. But even though it was only October, she had already sort of blown it off as, well, I can't have that, because I don't have anything scheduled. And in reality, it wasn't actually true. Her employer didn't require, some ridiculous thing like 6 months notice in advance. She just didn't have a plan for it. And if she didn't have a plan for it, she wouldn't ask for it, right? So it just wouldn't happen. So last year we had sat down and, made a plan, and we decided to use up little bits here and there, right? And she had some intentional time with her boyfriend, with her mom, right? And those were really meaningful. But this year we sat down here in June and said, all right, now we've got more use it or lose it this year. What are the things that we want to spend that time on, right? And then her homework became just naming weeks for the rest of the year, or if it wasn't weeks, right? Like how much time would go to each thing, right? So then it becomes, all right, I'm going to take a week off here. I was going to take 3 days off here and go visit my mom, right? Get it on the calendar with plenty of time, perhaps scattered for the next 6 months, right? So it's not all clumped together, right? It feels more spacious. Get that on the schedule now. If you're someone who wants to take holiday time, like vacation time at holidays, or maybe there's CME time that you need to use, get that scheduled now. I don't know why this is such a struggle for us, but I do find that this is a common area, and perhaps it's just because we are working so hard that we aren't able to really attend to things that are that far out in the future, even though we have been very future oriented in order to get where we are. But again, if we're looking at this list in this order, right, of personal, friends and family, and professional, again in that order, this is a good time to sit down and think for the next 6 to 12 months, what are the times off that I need? Let me get that on the calendar, right? Also in the scheduling, are you due for a checkup later this year? Do you need to schedule a mammogram, or it's time for your pap smear, right? Do you need a dental checkup? Get those things on the calendar as soon as possible. And again, right after having answered the question, how can I make this easier, right? When it comes to things like dental checkups, right? Schedule the next one on your way out the door. Simple things like that help us to get more things done more consistently. And we need to take advantage of those tools, which is why a question that is focused around how can I make this easier is a real lifeline for us. So again, how can I make this easier? And also, what needs to be scheduled now for a better second half of 2026? And then the last question I want to ask you again, in thinking towards, how we want the rest of this year to go, is what needs to be delegated and what needs to be deleted. Now, this, of course, gets into that space of boundaries that we've already referenced, and let's all acknowledge that many of us struggle with this. What needs to be delegated, as in, what can I turn over to somebody else? Sometimes that's going to require some coaching, some expectation setting, right? Some embracing of some work that's uncomfortable, but totally doable. Sometimes it's going to be just paying somebody else to do it, right? This is not a task for me. Maybe I hate doing laundry, right? And I can pay somebody else to take care of my laundry for me. Because if you're working full time or, full time as a doctor and you're spending so many hours taking care of other people, I guarantee you can pay somebody else to do your laundry and get back a little bit of your life and your brain cells, right? What can we delegate? What can we delete? There are often so many things on our to-do list that seem like a great idea that we're never going to get to. And I bet you could name 5 things right now that have popped up on your to-do list that have been there for a long time, continue to not get done. They don't really move the needle, and maybe they can just drop off. If you want to keep them somewhere, you can do that whole parking lot idea, right? And you can have a nice little notepad off to the side somewhere, right? Where you write down those things of, these are the things that I fantasize about doing that I have not done and I'm probably never going to get to. If that helps to relieve some of that sensation and you just parking lot it, fantastic. But what needs to be dropped off, right? What can we let go of thinking that I should do, would be good to do? I don't really want to do it. It doesn't really matter. It's not really going to make a difference, but it keeps popping up on the list. Let's go ahead and let ourselves drop that off. Again, you can parking lot it if you need to. You could write yourself a whole list of, here's the things that keep popping up that are never going to happen. I know they're not going to happen, but I keep fooling myself. Maybe you write that all down and you rip it up or burn it, right? What can we delegate and what can we delete? All right. Now I'm going to run through the list one more time. And so if you want to capture this in whatever way, and it will also be in the show notes, but here's the list of questions to help us have a more intentional second half of 2026. Here it goes. So what am I going to celebrate in the first half of 2026? Where can I shout myself out? Where can I pat myself on the back? Because celebrating little moments helps us as humans. Turns out that works much better as a motivator than, shame and blame that we grew up with. Number 2, what do I want from the second half of 2026? Thinking about it in this order: personal, family and friends, professional, right? So many of us live professional first, then family and friends, then personal. We're flipping that. So we're paying more attention up front. I know that may seem selfish. It is not, right? It is how we will actually start taking better care of ourselves and getting the things that we want, which makes us better humans, which helps us to feel better, right? Which allows us to thrive. So in that order: personal, family, friends, professional. Number 3, be really granular. Why do I want these things? That sounds too basic. Write it down anyway, because that helps to drive how you're going to decide what tweaks need to happen. Number 4, what's getting in the way? Again, be honest, be kind, stay out of judgment. It's not because you're a lazy human that you haven't gotten what you want yet. It is probably because you are an overscheduled human working in a broken healthcare system, trying to make up for that brokenness, trying to be the kindest, smartest person that you can, right? To be such a good problem solver, and you are taking on too much because you care so much, right? You are not lazy, but let's stay out of that and let's figure out, yep, it's because I'm spending too much time on my inbox. Yep, it's because I'm scrolling my phone. Yep, it's because I've got little toddlers at home and I don't have a spare brain cell. Okay, right? Let's figure it out. Let's be clear. Let's write it down. Question number 5. How can I make this easier? Thinking about that last example, right? If you've got a bunch of little toddlers at home, or even just one, right? And you're working as a physician, right? Trying to take care of all the other humans and this little one at home, that is a great time to be delegating. That is a great time to be hiring help, right? But the question we have to ask ourselves is, how can I make this easier, right? Making it easier doesn't mean, well, I just need to try harder. Making it easier means that I got to take some things off the list. I need to say no more often. I need to hire some help, right? I need to let go of some things, right? That's how we're going to make it easier. I need to, get some meal kits. I need to hire a personal trainer. Those are the things. Number 6, what needs to be scheduled, right? Again, we want to be granular here. What are the things, right? We need our checkups, dental and health, right? If we need to schedule with our therapist or our coach, if we need to schedule vacation time, CME time, let's make it happen, right? If you need to put something like exercise on your schedule, right? Take the time. Let's get it done. What needs to be scheduled? And finally, what needs to be delegated or deleted? If you sit down and spend even 30 minutes going through this exercise, I can guarantee you're going to highlight for yourself, okay. And you're going to be clear, because we're so often living up in our heads. We need to get things out. We need to be intentional about what it is that we want, to be honest with ourselves about what's getting in the way, and to ask ourselves this perfect question of, how can I make this easier, right? Not how can I make it more perfect? How can I always do the right thing every time? How can I do more? How can I be more? Nope. How can I make this easier? All right, my friends, I do hope that you will sit down and do this, because this is the kind of work that helps us to really make progress. And if we want the second half of 2026 to get us closer to the things that we want, to be able to spend more time taking care of ourselves, spend more connection time perhaps with friends or family, right? To think about some professional goals that we might have. This is the way we're going to make it happen. So spend some time, take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time.
Well, that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.